So, CBF, when are you gonna be watching Kamen Rider Double?
I don't know, man. We're just here watching this just on your suggestion. And oh shit, that's fucked up.
But in a good way.
Why did you want us to watch that again?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't beat Shogun Roku Roku Go Shinju, which I've been watching on my own time recently.
Of course, that shit's goated.
Well, look who decided to show up.
Hey guys, what's going on? I see you're watching. Oh, what the? Okay, what?
Yeah, sorry, Kaiser. You've been debated. We're not showing hentai. You can't leave, though.
Yeah, alright. I assume that there is some perfectly logical explanation for all of this.
Well, a little birdie told me that somebody is weirdly inclined to show up to places to socialize right when everybody's watching hentai.
It's a good thing that for both of us, we're doing it with some lovely beverages to cool us off during this hot spring day.
Admittedly, though, I didn't know that hot women getting tortured and having pieces of metal shoved under their flesh and being mutilated is your thing, but to each their own, I guess. I won't kink shame.
You know you guys are the ones watching it, right?
It was his idea.
Fuck off, dude. It was your idea. You're the one that said you were watching it, and then I decided to join in. And you selling the idea of watching it to me.
Guys, you're both valid, both among friends. I'm sure you guys would work very well if you had Tumblr accounts, okay? No kink shaming here.
No, shut the fuck up. Only one of us is a sex pervert, and that's neither I nor CBF. We're watching this for artistic appreciation reasons. What's your excuse?
Also, Tumblr committed seppuku a long time ago. It's on life support now.
Also, who uses Tumblr?
Exactly.
What are you, 12?
I was about to say, no, what are you? Like a 19-year-old art student chick?
Why has it gotta be a chick, Kaiser?
Because we all know what Tumblr is used for.
No, I don't. Why didn't you tell me?
Well, I would, but I would actually like for you to tell me what is this... What is all of this that's going on here? There's this cool chick with green hair and glasses. I remember hearing about this show, actually.
Astonishingly hot, cool woman in a suit.
Anyway, this is Rin, Daughters of Mnemosyne. Believe me, guys, if this wasn't the content warning for anyone to nope the fuck out, you should have noped the fuck out by now. We're gonna be talking about some crazy shit.
Yeah, all jokes aside, we're giving a trigger warning for this one.
There is gonna be a lot of... Remember when in the episode 17 when I talked about the sex and the violence?
Oh, wait. CBF, you're forgetting something.
Hmm?
This is the Newtypes podcast. Welcome. I'm Lone Crit, here with our co-host.
I'm CBF.
And I'm Young Kaiser.
Yeah, the sex pervert. I mean, Reploid.
Yes, him.
How am I the sex pervert? Listen, I don't know what Roger's been telling you, but they have been lies and slander, okay?
Actually, it was meta.
Well, anyone from his server...
And it's not ill-fitting with the picture for the idea of you liking, flesh being combined with metal. I just didn't think it was in this way.
Anyway, Rin, Daughters of Mnemosyne. If you haven't noped out by now, prepare for a lot of the sex, the violence, the sexual violence, the torture. This is probably going to be the most grievous thing we've covered so far.
At least until we cover Ranpa Togawa's The Caterpillar.
Yeah, like, if you watched Old Man Crybaby and thought that was the most asinine, just messed up fuck shit you've ever seen, this is a notch above that at points.
Oh, dude, this is more than a notch above that.
Or until we decide to talk about Violence Jack.
No, thank you.
I'd argue though that this is more progressive. Also, and I have Violence Jack on DVD. I bought it at a used DVD shop, so maybe one day, but I don't know if I should talk about that. I've heard of some of the contents, and I feel already be on some kind of list just talking about Rin in any positive light, if I don't, like, completely throw the more shady elements completely under the bus. I mean, if I don't do that.
Okay, so I heard about this anime. Yeah, we all seen the Arcada video, right?
From Arcada.
Yes.
I had it as planning for forever, but I don't know what the fuck it's about. It's about like an immortal chick or something. What's the story here?
By the way, first things first, I heard it was very gruesome, and so didn't want to watch it for the longest time. Little did I know this show is the kind of gruesome that, like, it's the kind of thing that people who watch Elfen Lied, or like, I don't know, maybe Corpse Party go, oh bro, it's so gruesome, it's so creepy, oh my god.
Yeah, because this anime has the reputation of being torture porn, which, to get this out of the way right now, that reputation's a bit overblown. The craziest it ever gets is in episode 1.
It's definitely overblown.
But you could argue that's a bit of a pleb filter if you want to be a pretentious asswipe about it.
Which we are.
I've seen nearly 2 episodes of it so far, and all I have to say is that I found Higurashi Nunaku Koroni way more off-putting from the first arc.
To be fair, you can't get that much crazier than seeing someone get their nails torn off on television and media.
Yeah, but that wasn't the first arc.
And also, to be fair to Higurashi, I think part of what made that show off-putting is just, like, the general animation quality. By that being the lack thereof. Especially going further in. Fuck Higurashi, to be honest. I don't like it.
Well, to be fair, from bits I've seen, it goes from incredibly well done to way too loose here and there. It kind of just depends, but anyway.
Yeah, we all seen the Mion face.
No, I haven't.
But yeah, anyway, that's actually a bit similar to the animation quality in Rin Daughters of Mnemosyne. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Some scenes look great, but there are a lot of weird art dips here and there, and it feels like they can't always fully communicate the intensity of some things.
To be honest with you, I'm way more bothered by the sound design, like when Rin was being chased down by that one woman in episode 1, and Rin locks the door, and instead of hearing thunk, dunk, 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 it's more like...
Oh, it sounds like freaking, I don't know, like one of those little firework pellet things that your friends used to annoy you with, like in the summertime or some shit.
Well, no, I mean, it's kind of a doorknob noise, but everything feels so quiet and underdone, except, weirdly enough...
A chain weapon.
Rin's fucking chain weapon thing, yeah.
Yeah, which has some of the smoothest animation of the episode. And don't worry, Lone Crit, the worst sound design comes in episode 6. Whenever characters are like grabbing and holding each other at one specific scene, it sounds like the stock whiffing punch sound effect.
Wow, they didn't even have the decency to record it themselves in studio, Sag. By the way, that scene where Rin's breast is being mutilated in episode 1, I can't remember the sound design there. Maybe it was decent enough. I was actually more focused on, like, Rin's eyes and the sound of her screaming.
Wow, we're really jumping right in there, aren't we?
Yeah, just jumping right to the nipple, aren't we?
Well, we had to get to it sometime.
Yeah, we're having to rip the band-aid out. Because we don't want to focus on how the sound design makes the sound design girl from Aizuken want to throw up.
Yeah, you joke, Kaiser, but in that scene, like, the antagonist of the episode grabbed Rin's shirt right at the nipple, pulled it and snipped the front off, and then went right for the nipple to mutilate it with either a scalpel or, like, some tweezers or something.
To create hole number 11.
Okay, so I'm gonna need all the Carfax on this. What is the story here? Why is this happening? Like, you don't have to give me the whole synopsis, but like...
Let me give you the broad picture of episode 1 and how it leads there, because that kind of also ties into everything.
So it all started when a woman liked cutting people up very, very much. Some may say a little too much.
Anyway, so, yeah, it's the story of Rin and also Mimi. They're basically immortal PIs, in a sense. But then they come across this guy whose last name is Mino. That's gonna be relevant way later than where Lone Crit's at right now, but...
Is it?
Yes. But, yeah, so essentially they come across him getting hunted down by people for mysterious reasons, and he kinda can't remember much. Well, more so that he can't remember anything, has amnesia, and more so he's physically just dissociated from his identity. for reasons that become all the more clear throughout the episode, where it turns out he's a clone of the guy who died getting tested on for clone research, and also the girl who will pierce Rin everywhere also tested on him and also did a lot of sexual stuff with him because she's a fucking degenerate.
Yikes.
Yeah, didn't like one of them fuck him just cause?
Yeah, she did. She did with him, like the original version of him. And this isn't even the worst part. The worst part is when it's revealed that there's an entire holding facility of essentially zombies, failed clones. He is the only actually successful one.
You see, this reminds me of like, so you know the Spider-Mans, right? And no, it's not like that. I was gonna
No.
talk about the clone saga. Granted, that's everybody's reaction that they should have to the Clone Saga, to be perfectly honest.
Really? When I saw The Amazing Spider-Man, I actually liked it.
No, I talked about... What? Whatever. I was gonna make a Jackal reference, him cloning Gwen Stacy a bunch, but fuck it. Who cares? This joke's dead.
We could turn that into a fairy tale joke if we want, now that you mentioned Jackal and cloning.
Wait, so we have more than one Gwen Stacy?
Technically, yes.
The incel jokes just write themselves. Remember that episode of Futurama where Fry had his own Lucy Liu?
Oh, yeah. I do. I remember that so much.
It's been so long since I watched it. It's been 8 years.
Oh, so you don't remember the episode where they made like a clone bot out of Lucy Liu, and Fry spent all day just making out with it?
No.
And then she had to fight a bunch of other like robot Lucy Lius.
I don't know, but anyway, let's get back to Mnemosyne. That girl that was chasing Rin in episode 1, it almost becomes a running gag just how tenacious she is. Every episode she keeps appearing to kill Rin, and for the next few episodes after episode 1, she just keeps blowing herself up a lot. Just every encounter at some point ends with her blowing herself up as a big fuck you to Rin because she can't actually kill Rin because, you know, immortal.
You know, I did not expect to remember Sunday Without God this podcast.
I have not seen that one.
I'm gonna pretend I know what that is.
Yeah, well, in that show, the main guy, Humpany Humbert, because he's an immortal, and because God forsook mankind and robbed humans of their ability to die, he just goes around blowing himself up, like strapping explosives to his chest, and blowing himself up to get out of situations where he'd be captured by people.
Humpty Humbut, what is that?
Yeah, I was about to say, and God must have forsaken his ass with that fucking name, dog.
Fucking Humpty Dumpty motherfucker over here.
No, it's Humpany Humbert, and it's a pseudonym. It's a pseudonym that he chose himself.
Why, though?
I think it had to do with a fairy tale that meant something to him and the woman he loved.
Okay. Yeah, let's actually try to get to the meat of Rin now, because, yeah, outside of that kind of being a running gag, and just how the other person just gets more and more deranged dealing with it, I think you'd be surprised to know that the show actually, at least for a while, has some semblance of an interesting idea going for it.
Well, there is another gag. I mean, vodka does mean water in Russian, you know.
Yes, it does. And that will never come up again in any episode of the show.
Speaking of which, CBF, could you please pour me some water, buddy?
Yeah, sure. Just know that right now it's kinda scalding.
I'll drink it later. I'm enjoying a cup of tea, I mean coffee right now.
Yeah, sure, but yeah, with this show, at least for episode 1 in particular, the main thing they established with Mino is just the idea of the transience and preciousness of life, which is why she ultimately fucks over the main antagonist who pierced her a bunch. Because just, you know, her experiments, that goes against the sanctity of life, just trying to keep cloning people in order to discover the secrets of immortality. So she lets the girl get eaten by a whole bunch of zombies. Until episode 3 when it turns out Appa saved her in the nick of time as she was getting eaten. But unfortunately, when you become immortal thanks to be given a certain spore from the tree of Yggdrasil, you can only return to the state you were in when you got that. So if, say, you're being mutilated by zombies,
Oh shit.
you're gonna be rough by default.
Well, this show goes places. Oh yeah, Kaiser, also all the immortals in the show are women, and the natural predators of the immortals are men, and also the only way an immortal can be killed is by being eaten out.
Okay, no, that's not the only way, but that's the only way the angels can do it. Physically and sexually eating them out, while removing the spore from them.
Biting them out.
A certain spore of immortality has to be removed from them.
Biting them out.
Otherwise, they're like Bakuno immortals in the sense that they'll put themselves back together.
By being eaten out.
And just a quick reminder, everybody, these guys are accusing me of being the pervert here, okay? I just really want to hammer that point, alright?
It's art, Kaiser. It's art, and it's called hentai. I mean eroguro.
Tell that to the judge!
It's not illegal.
But yeah, I do wish the show leaned on this a little less and focused more on just concepts involving the transience of life. Especially because this show does an interesting thing where every episode, it skips forward in time, except for episode 6. From episode 1 to 2, it's just 1 year, which partially eaten by zombies and burned. She had to basically just lie there for 20 years before the technology came along for her to be in like a sort of exoskeleton.
Based?
Well, I mean, that's fine. You can just call it practice. You can just call it practice for COVID.
Yeah, totally. That's fine. But then episode 2 to 3, it's 20 years, and that's when things start getting a little more conceptually interesting in that regard. In fact, the episode of episode 1 comes back for that, and because she was eaten by... But yeah, then episodes 3 to 4, and then 4 to 5 have similarly long time skips, so overall the show takes place across a 65-year time period. You get to see characters grow up, you get to see them die, Shinjuku at large just changing dramatically from the 90s to a crazy future 2055.
We get to see them grow up, have babies, teach their kids how to drive a car, see them go to college. I'm joking, of course. What was the show? Like 7 episodes?
Actually, Rin isn't into men.
I wasn't even referring to her.
She's too good for any of us.
Who else is it gonna be? Mimi and Rin are like the focus. By the way, that's another thing that I find interesting about Rin.
No, I was saying this in the sense that, like, when CBS saying, oh, we see characters grow old and die, I was presuming that, like, oh, these characters have, like, human characters that they hang out with and stuff like that, and they got their own shit going on, right?
Like, there are those that they interact with. Rin is pretty worldly because she often goes to a whole bunch of different people for information. She's able to hold things over their heads or even tease with them or have decent rapport. Even though you only get snippets of their lives and where they're at currently. Like a certain guy from episode 2 who lost it all. He was an academic, but now he's basically homeless. But still has a whole bunch of literary knowledge and some stamps.
Yeah, by the way, CBF, it's almost like she's been around basically forever. Wink, wink.
Don't worry, Don't worry, she's been alive for over 1,000 years, actually, we find out in the last 2 episodes.
Really? I was estimating she was more like in the hundreds, but anyway, that's another thing. I find it really interesting that they make her like worldly and wise, but concurrently they make her vulnerable. One of the bits I found the most interesting was in episode 2, after she'd been shot up by, redhead Booba.
She's red-haired Booba.
Whose name we'll learn is Laura. She's also immortal.
It doesn't matter. She doesn't matter.
She's the second most fun character in the entire show. It's hilarious just how far she's willing to go, to the point where in episode 5, we don't even see her, but she just starts in Christmas yelling, ho ho ho, Merry Christmas, and then takes a fucking RPG to Rin's apartment.
Jesus Christ. That sounds like on some Kekai Sense and shit.
Okay, that's really, really funny, but regardless, she's shot up. Okay, she's shot up and she's regenerating, and the main guy comes along and she tells him not to look, and he's horrified. Like, he kind of cowers and he can't even close his eyes because he's so scared, so he keeps watching. It actually reminds me a little bit of when Lauren sees Holo transformed in Spice and Wolf, which we'll never talk about on this podcast.
Even though that show's also cool.
Yeah, it is. It's goated. Anyway, though, while Rin's away after regenerating, he goes back to the office and talks with Mimi, and she's like, I understand if you don't want to come here anymore, blah blah blah, and it's a whole sad moment, and you can tell that this kind of thing has happened before. But then he's about to leave after drinking. No, he's about to leave, and he's like, well, I'll be in for work tomorrow. And then she gets super excited and then they started drinking. And then Rin eventually comes back, and he gets up and he's like, "Oh my god, where were you? I was so worried." And rather than looking at him, Rin looks at Mimi, and she has this kind of sad surprised look, like she's surprised, and she switches to sad. And then Mimi just gives her this kind of nod and this soft look, and then Rin's face also softens up and looks emotionally moved, and you get it. She was afraid that another person was going to leave her after learning of the horrifying in some ways nature of her physicality, and she was in disbelief about the fact that he was still around. You can tell this has happened a few times, or at the very least that it weighed down on her mind a lot, and that this had happened to both of them and they were together in their loneliness. And so when she gives that look, that nod, it's like, he's staying. And she feels moved. It's great.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's one of the many ways the show is able to make a pretty decently engaging cast, even though most of them only matter to either their own episodes or will only stay around here and there for a few episodes before they're killed off. The Maino guy gets killed off in pretty unsatisfying ways in episode 3. The scientist lady finally gets killed off in episode 3. Other characters, at this point, almost any character who was alive in the 1990s, except for the person that Maino was having as a client looking for her angel brother in episode 2.
Because of course she
is dead by episode 4. God knows if she's even alive by episode 5 when it's 65 years into the future.
Because of course he is.
That's depressing. I liked the academic guy.
Yeah, I don't even think we see him again after he's injured in episode 2. He's probably dead by now. It's been 64 years since 1991.
Oh, so we actually go into the future.
Yeah, we get time skips between episode 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and 4 to 5.
That's very interesting. Do we have hoverboards and Jaws 10?
No, but we do have a lot of VR.
Is One Piece still going?
That we probably don't know.
Has Mega Man X9 been made?
No.
Did Kingdom Hearts 4 at least come out within the next 5 years?
Yes, and we're still waiting for Kingdom Hearts 7.
Do we have Super Mecha Death Kentaro Miura continuing Berserk?
It has finally finished in 2043.
Huzzah.
Well, he was probably revived by Disney.
But yeah, it's there's a whole... And of course, in episode 4, there's this one rogue AI who was actually a teenage girl who was killed off and put into an AI body.
Because of course she was.
Yeah, for the first 4 episodes, it's primarily standalone antagonist, her who gets obsessed with Maino's son, who grew up since episode 3, because he wanted to meet her IRL instead of in the 2.0 virtual reality.
It sounds like an astonishingly good metaphor for all of our relationships on Discord. I mean, this manga cafe?
Yeah, this is a cafe. What the hell are you talking about?
Yes, totally.
Is it a cafe in cyberspace?
That's a spoiler question.
Wait, is it C, Control the Money and Soul of Opportunity, or Log Horizon or something?
I don't know, but this motherfucker just pulled a Kruby right here with that's a spoiler question. Fuck you, Kaiser.
Anyways, so would you guys recommend that I watch, I can't pronounce it.
Honestly, kinda.
Yes, definitely.
My favorite episodes are 1 and 5. 1 being the most promising and structurally sound, and 5 being the one where Rin gets to the absolute worst shit. Because in episode 4, at the end of episode 4, she's in an airplane set piece to beat the main antagonist of that one. And she has to get chopped up into mulch. You remember Incredibles?
Yeah, I was just picturing that.
Yeah, something like that happens to Rin over the ocean. You can imagine how long it takes for her to finally get pieced back together, and that memory and a bunch of other stuff is gonna be scrambled up. The results are pretty fucking sad when life catches back up to her in 30 years.
Oh, by the way, I want to go back to the mutilation scene for a sec. It has 2 very interesting attributes, so we don't actually see it happen. You see the hand with the scalpel move into Rin's flesh after the woman grabs her, objectifying her in that sense, much like the camera is objectifying her. And then you cut to Rin's face, where we hear her scream. We hear the sound of the scalpel cut her flesh, and we see the blood splatter on her face, and we see her eyes widening, but we never actually see what happened. But the way it's cut, the sequence of motions and actions is progressing in real time. So right when she reacts is when the scalpel would have made contact with her flesh and cut her up.
Okay.
And then the scene fades and we get to see the aftermath. Her face, everything has been pierced. And then when she's finally killed off and then eventually has to get out again in a separate area, she has to remove a bunch of the stuff. And while we don't see it in detail,
That would have taken a while.
it's probably the most grossed out I was in the entire show.
I want to say it's like the not Higurashi, but I don't actually remember if Higurashi showed you the violence or not. I think it did.
Yeah, it did. The level of violence in Higurashi, to be fair, isn't as, like, complex in its graphicness, if that makes any sense. It's not, like, intricate, like, oh, having me be, like, stabbed in dozens of places with like, a scalpel and everything. So there's a lot more that it can show and get away with reasonably.
It doesn't have a woman being stabbed with 1 billion piercings.
Yeah, but it did have a child being stabbed. So there is that.
Hooray!
Wow, CBF, that's pretty fucked up.
Hey, it turns out I share a little bit of similarities with Neon or Shion.
But CBF, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room.
But speaking of children...
Not yet, Kaiser. Speaking of, actually, wait a sec, could you please pour me a little more water? I think you didn't do much earlier.
It's a bit colder now, but yeah, here's some more.
Okay, but time we address the elephant in the room that I really want to talk about before we move on. So, the sexually exploitative violence and the objectification on display from the camera and the characters in the story, and just the way the characters are treated, and having that sort of material in this kind of thing in the first place. Would you say it's a bug or a feature?
A bit of both. I know the show runs on porn logic, and that there's gonna be a lot of torture, like the main antagonist Apos constantly is playing chess, basically one-sided against a person, whatever immortal he wants, just gagged and stabbed in a chair. They can't actually do anything, they have no autonomy over anything. And in episode 5, they actually do something interesting with that, because that one's the actual body for Laura after he makes her into a cyborg with Rin's visage, just so he could do the nasty with her. And when he comes back, he first punctures the immortal so all of her actual limbs fall off from the cyborg body, and then he does the you-know-what to her, off-screen.
Oh.
Ooh, that's phenomenal. I was gonna say, because what actually separates Rin from your average, like,
Yeah, like redo of healer or something like that.
Yeah, kinda. I think with Rin, it's a combination of having a little more restraint and just being more classy or skillful in its presentation. It definitely doesn't go as far as it could, and it definitely can.
Especially because it's an OVA, it's not a TV production by any means, so it probably can do stuff.
Oh my god, imagine this shit in TV.
God, no.
It has a tactful sort of presentation to it, and I think another major attribute in favor of the show and this sort of material is just that it's very, very stylish.
Even though it's very sleazy and there's opportunities for girl-on-girl sex all over the place, and even angels, doing the you-know-what, the show still has like a fun 2000s stylings to its aesthetic, and especially the memorable OST, which makes me want more tubular bells in media OSTs. It's just, it has a fun presentation to it, even if it can be a bit much at times.
Also, the show doesn't have an ugly bastard.
Wait, yeah, that's definitely. Well, I guess that automatically turns off Sid Snap fans.
Which makes it better.
Yeah, objectively.
True. I wish it explored like the transits of life stuff more with examples, because it kind of just goes harder into its crazy porn Yggdrasil plot thing by the latter half, and some things do get a bit weird and dumb, and I don't fully know what they're going for by the end of the show, but it's still pretty decent. I think it picks up again towards the latter half after episodes 2 and 3 become less interesting, despite the fact that I think they in episode 4 are the only ones with B plots, as far as I remember.
I don't know, I'd call it like easy, sleazy, breezy entertainment with sleaze, but also some class.
Yeah, it's a classy hop.
Yeah.
And some legit, like, cool, memorable styles and aesthetics. It's what Red Letter Media, I think, would call a classy sleaze. Although I get the feeling they had something different in mind when they used that phrase. But, it's got, like, some undercurrent of meaning, just enough to, like, give meaning to the narrative and the characters. And again, Rin is a really cool, substantial character. Like, she gets objectified, and she has her ability to express her agency restricted, but that doesn't hamper or take away her character. It's something that happens to her sometimes, but doesn't define her, in the same way that, say, what you get with a lot of Hiro Mashima's girls.
Or a lot of shonen girls in general.
Yeah, to be fair. So you're saying this is more, I guess, embellishing the atmosphere in the character of the show, rather than, again, taking away from it then?
To some extent.
I'd say it adds to it. Adds. Not enhances, adds. It's...
Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay.
But yeah, I think Rin and like, the lore girl that keeps chasing after her, and some other characters here and then that are entertaining, have their own fun dynamics and unfortunate fates here and there, do ultimately carry the show, even though it can be a little bit clunky in its presentation, and when it goes harder into some of the plot stuff, it does feel a bit dumb, convenient, and just weird.
I feel this will be one of our most questionable episodes yet, if not the most questionable one, because I objectively pointed to what happens in episode 1 of Rin, and went, yeah, no, I'm in favor of this is good, I appreciate it.
I mean, ideally, in regards to showcasing horrific quote-unquote torture porn in regards to media and shit like that, ideally, you would want it to be somewhat, not exactly tasteful, but skillful and with a little bit of class, as you described it. Seemed like the directing, again, from what you described it, seemed to do well to showcase, why this is happening to Rin, and just focusing on the horrific aspect that it's happening, rather than just, showing what, I could do this, I'm taking a pen and doing this to her.
Well, I mean, the reason it's happening is objectively that somebody in the real world wanted it to happen, but at the same time, it's not like a lot of those trashy light novel adaptations that you see where that's literally the only thing they have going for them. And I don't mean anime adaptations, I just mean manga, for example.
Yeah, it's not like something like Happy Sugar Life either, where it's still too indulgent. It can be a bit indulgent, but it's not so insanely over the top in that regard that it kind of just becomes laborious.
Oh, thank God.
And it's there for shock value more than anything else, because it just overplays its hand.
Yeah, anyway though, I think we've just about fully explored the Rin subject as much as we're going to.
Because I'm the only one who's seen the whole thing. You've only seen 2 episodes, correct?
What score would you give it, CBF?
Yeah, it's 6. It's decent, a bit inconsistent, and I do think the 1st and 5th episode, especially the first one, is the best, but definitely has more merits than one might give it credit for, just looking at it from the outside. And yeah, it's one of the few shows where the OST stuck with me for a long time, even before I watched it, because it's just one of the few shows that does feel contemplative, even if I wish it explored aspects of life and mortality, etc., more interestingly and more varied.
Either way though, I think I agree with you, CBF. I think its reputation does it a strong disservice. I think it's much better than its reputation would lead you to think. And despite the controversial and contentious nature of the material, I think this show, it does definitely deserve a lot more attention, a lot more notoriety, and I think it does deserve to just generally be appreciated by people. I think this is definitely a show that's worth more than it gets.
Okay, well, I'll definitely give it a shot.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting late 2000s production, even if it's one where it's, even more than anything else we've covered, it's very much not for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, if it's for you, it's definitely for you. Rin herself, too, to cap off, she's just a very cool character. Like, CBF, I think that Rin, to you, may be what Emeraldus is to me.
Or, like you told me once, maybe a bit how, Enma is, where it starts strong, ends a little bit weak, but there's some interesting stuff here and there, even towards the end, that still makes it a strong enough, worthwhile endeavor to sit through.
I feel this is a running theme in our podcast where we watch OVAs and find, we like some really, really cool female characters in these things. Between Emeraldus, Rin, and Kaiser, while we didn't go into it too much in the other podcast, Yukihime from Enma, she definitely could have, it was more so about Enma, but I still feel she was a very cool character too. She was very simple, but the presentation really made her work, and the chemistry.
Yeah, the presentation and chemistry definitely helped with her.
But yeah, now to something completely different and way more wholesome. So if you didn't want to hear about the fuck shit from Rin, just want something a bit more wholesome, or a lot more wholesome, here you go. It's your guys' time to shine now.
Skip to this part. And I gotta tell ya, Kotarou Lives Alone, holy shit, it is so much better than I thought it absolutely would be.
Anime of the year?
possibly anime of the year.
Oh, really? Well, I wonder how you guys are gonna feel about that when Kaguya 3, which has already just started airing, comes out.
Yes. Okay, fine. Top 2 anime of the year, because I don't see anything beating Kotarou, aside from maybe that.
I'm interested in Spy Family, but yeah, Kotarou is one where, just based on the poster and the fact that it was a Netflix original, and kinda wrote it off because I hate the way it looks, and most Netflix stuff, like ONAs made for Netflix, are the not good. But I did keep my ear open and hear that, in spite of all that, it's genuinely just one of the more heartfelt shows of the year and in a while, and making it pretty much one of the best in Netflix's original catalog.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not a fan of the nostalgia critic Doug Walker, but I remember once he did a video where he expressed the sentiment that the light in a material can't shine that much brighter because you have some darkness to contrast it, and I think that's something very nice about Kotarou, too. That's what gives it a lot of its backbone and sets it apart from a lot of other things. It's the fact that it abundantly and vehemently celebrates the positivity in life. Like, you have so many randos, people on the street, side characters, etc., and they're all good people. I think that's one of the most salient aspects of the show's attitude and intentions. But at the same time, though, it includes a substantial amount of the dark. It can be very somber a lot of the times. That just really elevates it beyond what one would expect to be the basic components of material like this, where it'd be, you know, positive and feel good all the time.
Yeah, and I feel like the best way in regards to displaying that contrast is the way it transitions between the two. Usually in most shows, it's sort of like the scenes between like, oh, a happy moment and a sad moment are so drastically different. You know, like the music stops, the directing is different, all that shit. But in Kotarou, it's a lot smoother. In the first episode, where, what was it? When Kotarou was talking to, the secondary
Mizuki.
Oh, yeah, was talking to Mizuki. And we actually got some hints from a previous scene that, oh, she's somewhat in an abusive relationship. Trigger warning, sorry.
Yeah, she was in a toxic relationship with a financially and emotionally abusive boyfriend that was exploiting her for money, and he was possibly either a degenerate gambler or a drinker or something.
That's another thing. There are a lot of times when the show as a whole is like kind of a little bit subtle with the implications with what the characters are going through, but still.
That was not subtle.
I mean, not like subtle in the terms of like, oh, she's in an abusive relationship. In this case, I mean subtle in terms of like specifics, right?
Well, we don't need to see that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But what we do see later on in that scene is that Kotarou and the other character, Karino, his neighbor, visits Mizuki's room. And Kotarou sees she has some bags under her eyes, and he quickly is all like, hey, let's go, get a bottle of, I think it was iced tea or something. And Kotarou was basically able to tell, just from looking at her, that she was crying all night, and he gave that short, well, not exactly a speech, but he let her know that, hey, it's not weak to cry, it's okay to feel bad, you don't need to tell us anything. Just giving that sort of emotional support and displaying that emotional maturity as well, especially given what he has gone through, I found incredibly fucking endearing.
It's interesting, he has a child's emotional innocence in some ways in regard to approach, while concurrently having the sight or awareness that comes from an adult's awareness. It's very interesting. And that's how we learn more, too, about his background. Because if you read between the lines, I mean, this is the more subtle aspect. He didn't live with his father for very many years. He largely was taken by his mother, and we don't know about any other adults in his life. So the implication being that the person he was so used to crying was his mother. I just realized that just now.
But yeah, aside from like some of the backstory stuff, what is the whole thing about, really?
Well, it's pieced together over the course of the show with varying degrees of subtlety. Sometimes they just tell you, sometimes, you know. So, I'm just gonna fully spoil you.
Please don't. I do actually kind of want to watch the show too. Enough of the general basics that can be inviting.
So to tone down the spoilers a bit then, Kotarou used to live with his mother and father, but then at some point in time, for whatever reason, his father ended up becoming abusive or going off the right path, and so his mother took custody, but his mother fell into a depression of some sort as well, and that somehow led him to moving out and living alone.
Actually, CBF, here's a good question. So which episode are you in?
You know, I haven't watched the show. I'm somewhat interested in watching it, especially considering the word of mouth made it seem way more positive and promising than I initially took it to be.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely worth the watch.
Yeah, I think just the fact that they tell you stuff about Kotarou's home life little by little is the impressive thing. Like, the whole thing with Mizuki crying, Kotarou says he's used to adults crying and taking care of them, which implies that he's used to either his father or his mother, but most likely his mother, because she had custody of him a little later in life. And he's 4, most likely used to her crying, because we see later in the show that she did deal with some level of depression. As late in his life, she started ignoring him, whereas she paid more attention, even if it was only potentially token attention to him earlier on in his life.
Yeah, it's very disheartening in a lot of ways, but it makes Kotarou all the more admirable in an interesting way, at least to me. Even before he was forced to live alone, you get the impression that he's a lot more observant than most kids his age anyways.
Well, he wasn't forced, actually.
I mean, well, not exactly forced, but you know what I mean. You can tell that he has a lot more level of insight and much more observant than, you know, most kids or even people around his age in general, right? His ability to kind of just take the things that happen to him and uses that as a way to connect with other people, even a little bit despite his circumstances, while also still having certain walls that he hasn't really broken down yet or coming to terms with, makes it all the more admirable, because you can tell little things about what these people meant to him just from him interacting with the people he is with now.
Oh yeah, it's weirdly subversive in this regard, where you see a kid who's weirdly good at a thing, or somebody's young who's very good at like this, and this, and instead of playing it purely for comedy, it's kind of played for comedy, but it also has kind of a morbid reason. It's not just skills, it's ways of seeing things, it's attachments to things. On that subject, one of my favorite things was with the glove, because up until that point in time we thought that Kotarou's mother was just depressed, but we learn about that, and it makes it so much more interesting to think about how he sees things. It merits mentioning, CBF, that a lot of this show's kind of heart, in practice, like what you see on the surface, comes from the fact that Kotarou's basically a mind reader. He'll be put into a lot of situations and you'll think he doesn't know what's going on, but he can actually see through just about everybody with the exception of the lead, Karino, and even then, him only sometimes. And you'll see these things come out of his mouth that show that it's not that he's fooled. He's very naive and optimistic, but he sees through people perfectly and hopes for the best. Like, there's one plotline where somebody's, like, taking advantage of him for money, and we're led to believe that Kotarou's being fooled, but then he's not being fooled. He knows exactly where that money's going. He just really, really believes in that person and their potential.
You know, this reminds me a lot of Mob from Mob Psycho 100.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because he's a similar character, just like being very empathetic, and he generally knows what's up, but still believes in people and can see through a lot of their bullshit, even though for the longest time we are led to believe that he's a lot more naive and clueless than he actually is.
Of course, Mob comparatively has a much more, I guess, growth period, sort of a learning curve that he had to go through compared to Kotarou. But yeah, it's an interesting connection. I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah, that's another thing. I feel like every time you're given some darkness in Kotarou, you're also given some positivity. Like, anytime you're given a character that seems dubious or just bad, you're also given something to believe in them or let you see their humanity and, you know, see that they have some positive intentions of their own. Like, while Kotarou's dad was abusive, it's also implied that he loves Kotarou in his own way. While Mizuki's boyfriend was abusive to her, he's not completely shut down, even though we don't see him on screen, because she still loves him, and so as an extension, it's speculated that he had and still has something to love, or at least has the potential for that. And my favorite personal thing was with the detective. You know, where he lifts his shirt up and it's like, oh, and then he goes, despite what you may think, I do in fact have a heart. It's like, yo, what?
Actually, another moment like that I really liked was, I don't think this was a whole episode, but he was spending time with one of the other neighbors in the apartment he's living in, the gangster guy. I think he was walking with him like out of the park or towards the park or something. And they were passing by some other neighbors, some chicks just talking shit about him, making rumors and just like being concerned that this guy is spending this much time with like a 4-year-old.
Well, at least this isn't GTO, so there are no bear costumes.
Fuck you for that.
You know, like they got to talking, and Kotarou was talking about like, hey, I want to get better at, you know, being fashionable so I can have more friends and more people can like me. And like the dude turns back at like the women just like scoffing at him. And he looks at him with a sort of blank but dispassionate expression on his face and is all like, is it really that bad to be hated by people? Or disliked, I think that's the word he used. It really pieced together that, hey, you know, even though he knows that he is in this life that he probably had chosen, he does have his own regrets about it in regards to, you know, how it allows him to connect with people, or even the lack thereof. It makes his bond with Kotarou all the sweeter because of that. Because, you know, even though Kotarou is a little bit put off by him, he still respects him.
Personally, for me, they do lay it on a little bit thick with that character. He's like my least favorite one. But yeah, again, they just throw these little nuggets of like background info at you though that kind of recontextualizes how you see things every now and again too. Like, again, the glove thing had me like, oh my god. I wonder if people actually do that, by the way.
I never thought that would actually be a thing. I think that story kind of involved another one of my least favorite side characters. She isn't bad. Definitely not. It felt a little bit tacked on, especially how she wasn't really consistently as utilized as Mizuki, at least to me, comparatively. Because I think she was there for like the last 4 episodes or something.
Yeah, that reminds me, so, here's a difficult question. How do you feel about the way they resolved the thing with Mizuki? Because I feel, especially like from an American perspective, that people can see the way they concluded that as very... But personally, I liked it. I think there was quite a bit of nuance there. And they definitely made it an emotionally complex matter and didn't just reduce it to, you know, victim-victimizer.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was watching it, I was a little bit like afraid that they were going in that direction with her, because this was at a point where her relationship was really getting bad, and I think she was trying to get a restraining order on.
No, that came later.
Oh, that did?
Oh shit.
What I was afraid of is like when Kotarou was like, no, don't report him to the police, or she said she's not reporting to the police or something. No, yeah, Kotarou was like, no, don't report him to the police, don't send him to jail, and like... Uh-oh.
Show, what are you doing?
But then the show explains, and it's like, okay.
At least Mizuki did the smart thing anyways.
And to be fair, restraining orders won't necessarily put someone in jail unless they violate it, but I think this might be the only anime I've ever heard of to feature restraining orders. Like, I know I sometimes see that in, like, American cartoons, usually as a joke, and, like, some kids meet at, like, total drama and whatnot.
Oh, total drama especially.
But it's not often that I never hear about this in anime, let alone in a serious context.
Remember that episode of Community where, like, John Oliver's character, Ian Duncan, he just acts like he has the force around Ben Chang?
Oh, yeah.
No, I haven't, but that sounds hilarious.
Community is so fucking good and funny, man. But that's not anime, that's a sitcom.
So like Konosuba.
Except this show's actually good.
You mean Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the animation, right?
No, I meant that Corey in the House.
Of course, the best anime.
Man, fuck Corey, he's the worst. He was always an annoying little shit, and Raven was also kind of,
And now he's in prison.
Hooray! Okay, but yeah, I think it's about time we wrap up.
Yeah, cause man, it's interesting thinking about it, how both these shows honestly kind of feel fitting in a way being put together. One, just exploring, to some extent, just the transience of life over the course of time.
And the other one exploring why life is good, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and like a more very specific context, like a specific community in a time period, just embellishing that.
But both of them star Giga Chads that also need a hug.
Yes.
Karino and Kotarou are both great. Oh, and before we wrap up, it's great. The ending of Kotarou is great. It took a very simple character, Karino, and did something amazing with him. and it made me want to cry my eyes out. That was fantastic.
Anything else, I absolutely recommend anybody, whether you do or don't have like a Netflix subscription, don't give a shit. Watch Kotarou, it's really good. I gave it a 7.5, sorry.
I gave it an 8.
Especially because Netflix is on some absolute fuck shit lately, so if you want to watch it elsewhere, be our guest.
But, by the way, big thanks to the Flurry Fleur lady.
Yeah, if you ever want to wash the bitter taste of Japan sinks out of your mouth, go watch Kotarou.
Yeah, big thanks to the Flurry Fleur lady for bringing that one to my attention. That being said, I've just about finished my tea, so time for my water. CBF, top me up.
Alright, here you go, buddy.
There we go. CBF, what the fuck was that?
Vodka means water in Russian, you know.
You cheeky cunt.
See you guys next time on the Newtypes podcast. Bye!